you ever do something and stop and think, why am I this way? What caused me to be like this? Why do I have these thoughts? Well, today you're in luck. We're going to talk about how you're fucked because of your childhood. This is the Existential Stoic podcast. I'm Danny Hurley. Randy, what's up, Randy?
Yo, Danny, this
Yes,
is
this
an
is an interesting,
appropriate topic.
right? Yeah. I mean, do you think about this a lot? Because like I've started to, and maybe it's just like getting old enough where you're at a point where you can like kind of look back and separate. Like, because like when you're 20, you're still like young,
Hmm.
like, you're still, your childhood's still very close. I feel like there's enough distance now where you can look back kind of more reflectively on it and like wonder, because so much of, we like to think we're so in control of ourselves, but so much of who we are is a product of like both like our genetic information and also like how we were raised, how we're indoctrinated, the culture we belong to. I mean, it's funny how hard it is to actually really distance yourself from all of that sort of like, fixed information and beliefs you have.
Yeah. I actually heard recently that it's generally in people's mid to late 30s when they start to realize all the messed up stuff from their childhood. Like it takes that long to
Yeah.
really figure it out. And for me, it wasn't until just recently when I started to realize it because I read this book, like maybe you should talk to someone or something about this like therapist seeing another therapist. And I was like, oh, maybe I should go to a therapist and like, work out my problems from childhood. And it wasn't until I did that that I realized that like I seriously had a messed up childhood, like a lot of stuff. But the thing is, you have like an N of one. You have one experience, and it's your
Yeah.
subjective experience. You have no idea what it's like elsewhere. And yeah.
Well, it's funny. When I was doing existentialism with my students talking about authenticity, I said to all of them too, I was like, think about it. Like you're born, most people don't have a conscious memory until I think they're about 4 or 5, right?
Oh yeah.
So those first few years, you're just being, fed all this stuff and forming all these, there's the seeds of all these beliefs. Then pretty much from there until you're about 20, you're still not really rational because your brain's not fully developed till you're 28. So you're just fed all this outside stuff has so much influence on you. And we always say like little kids are like sponges. Like you see kids like learn languages, skills, like nothing. Like they absorb everything around them. So like it makes total sense that a lot of our beliefs have nothing to do with our own choices, but in fact are just there because that's what we've always thought. That's what
Hmm.
everybody around us thought, and it's like, so that's really hard to then start breaking away from to form your own beliefs. And it sucks because I think it doesn't happen until much later that you realize it and can start actually thinking about it in a rational way. So it is crazy, right?
Yeah,
And I
because
think
like,
everybody's had, interesting childhoods.
well, that's another thing is like, so now there's like this trauma chic kind of where like everybody has
Yeah.
trauma. And it's like, it's true. Everybody does have. I mean, especially in Western cultures. Because like, your parents are too busy making a living to actually be there for you. You don't have extended family to take care of you. So like you're left to deal with a lot of this stuff that would be helpful to have a family around. You're left to deal with it on your own. And so that
Yeah.
messes people up, especially like the first 12 years of life your brain is developing so quickly, like neural connections and brain cells, like more develop in that than the whole entire rest of your life combined. And so, like, that ends up defining you. And if you don't have the structure there to build you into a decent person, like, it's crazy. There's actually, okay, so there's a couple crazy books that I've read recently. One was called Complex PTSD, and another was called The Tao of Fully Feeling. They're both by the same guy. I don't know what his name is, but it's basically
I'm
about
looking
how,
at
like,
those.
in westernized culture, we're screwed just because of how we were raised. Because, like, we don't have the family structure to give us that feeling of safety and everything that we need when we're developing, and safety and love and all this different stuff. And
Yeah.
because of that, it just messes us up for the rest of our life.
I think it's very rare that people have that because, I mean, well, what is it? Divorce is like, I mean, very high.
Hmm.
Most people come from families that are, multiple split families and stuff like that. So that makes it hard. See different beliefs being fed to you that way. I mean, it's like our country can't agree on anything, so that's a mess. And like
Hmm.
community doesn't really exist. I think you're right. Like, I think it's very rare when you see families that are very like that are obviously healthy in a very strict way, like
Hmm.
sense, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think it's interesting because we all deal with that. And then it's like, you have to, I think the hard part too is I think when as you get older is realizing like, okay, this stuff happened. So now I have to make a choice of like, do I want to deal with it and for my own beliefs, or do I want to just like keep running with this stuff as if
I'm
this is
like,
true, you know?
yeah, yeah,
And I think
right.
a lot of people, I think it's easier, right, to just keep, doing
Hmm.
whatever you were doing because that was normal.
Hmm.
But I think there is a lot of value in like just starting to kind of question these things and think for yourself and start making the choices on things that you might not have been able to choose before.
Yeah. I mean, that's a great point because I was thinking like we come into this world pretty much unburdened with anything, and then we have all
Yeah.
this stuff dumped on us and all this trauma and everything else, and then so it only takes like 5 to 7 years, and then we're screwed up for the whole entire rest of our life until we can figure out a way to undo whatever was done. And
Yeah.
yeah, but it's
Well, it's crazy.
yeah.
It is hard though, too, right? Because I mean, it's also like, like you said, you only have a test case of one,
Hmm.
like it's not like you have other child. It's not like you get to like before you're born, you get to see a bunch of different lives and choose between one or something where you have some, informed choice there. So yeah, it's not like we're making choices in this case, and I'm not, and it's funny too because it's like even if your parents are doing their best and from their perspective, they're just people too.
Hmm.
So they have all their problems that they've been dealing with, like all the things in their lives.
Yeah.
And, so, but it just keeps perpetuating itself.
And usually it's just this pendulum that swings back and forth. Like you can see, I mean, if you look, you
Yeah.
can kind of see like the familial like passing down of this stuff. Like their parents were one way, so they said, I'm not going to do that. They do the exact opposite. And then you see that
That's
and you're
too
like, I'm
far.
not going
Yeah.
to
They
do
go,
that. So you do the exact opposite. And it's just like going back and forth and
yeah,
just
it's
a
like your
complete
parents were
mess.
too strict, so you're not strict at all. Then the
Yeah.
kids are like, well, that was horrible. Then
Yeah.
no boundaries. So then they get
Hmm.
really strict. Yeah. Yeah, it
Yeah.
is funny. It's weird though. I think these are hard things to deal with too, because like it can come with a lot of difficult questions of, both like being honest with yourself about like your past and your how you were raised and stuff like that. But also not wanting, I think a lot of people too don't want to like make it seem like they're, you know, they still want to love their family and stuff. They don't want to make them out to be like these monsters when they weren't. I mean, they were still trying to do the best they could. And like,
Hmm.
a lot of people, both parents worked maybe, it's hard.
Yeah.
The modern world we live in is not really, I mean, that's what's funny to me too, is like, as much as our society loves to talk about family, it is not structured for family at all. And that's the last thing that's on its mind. And in fact, the
Hmm.
only thing on our mind is money and making more, I guess. But like,
Hmm.
yeah, it's really crazy when you think about it, because like we talk about family values all the time, but like we live in a society where both parents have to work to afford it. So that means the kids have to be sent to like daycare and other where other people are raising your kids for you and stuff. And it's kind of strange when you think about it.
Well, dude, it's crazy to think about because, before COVID, both parents needed to work to
Yeah.
provide. And then inflation, everything doubled in price and nobody's making any more money. So now both parents need to work just to be in debt.
Yeah.
It's like
Oh, dude, it's
crazy.
insane. Yeah. I
Yeah.
don't know how people do it anymore with kids. Like it's so expensive and it's gotten so hard. And that's the other problem too, because if both parents are working or like, because we were still, I think our generation was probably the last one where there was somebody at home when we were younger, for most people, I think.
Hmm.
Um, but with both parents working, it's like, how it is too. Like you work all day and jobs can be very draining. So you
Hmm.
get home, you might not have a lot of energy to then give to your family, your kids who really need that energy from you. And it's not that you're trying to be a bad parent. It might
Yeah.
just be that you're just exhausted and you're dealing with your own stuff too and like your people, right?
Yeah.
So it is very hard. I don't know, like I don't want to blame people, but at the same time, it's like I think as individuals, I think it's in our interest to deal with this stuff at some point.
Hmm.
And it's like we do all figure this out at some point. Like I went through I know for like it was hard for me like 10 years because thinking back on it and just realizing things that like I probably should have realized earlier, but you just don't see.
Yeah, because you have no idea. And
Yeah.
then you go on to like replay the same like troubled patterns you had in childhood in
Yeah.
adulthood. Like you start
Yeah.
looking at people as people you related to in childhood, and it's just, yeah, we just keep on doing the same stuff over and over again.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, I think it is best to try and to try and just make choices on things that you weren't able to make choices on before. So like, we can now choose because we are a rational person now, like what do you believe? What values matter to you?
What
Those things.
person's
But then,
rational?
yeah, right. I know.
We're
I mean,
emo-
like our brains are fully formed now, so now we can look
okay.
back and make these, but we
Ah,
can think about this now,
yeah.
right? So like now I think it's an opportune time, like, but doing it as early as you can is good. But asking yourself those hard questions and then also asking yourself, like, because look, do you want to deal with this crap forever? No, nobody does. And it's hard,
Hmm.
Do
Hmm.
you want to or do you want to know why you get angry or you get so frustrated at people, like, and it's like, look at that. Yeah, it is fun. It's funny too that like we're pumped from the outside. We're given all these biases and all these beliefs and all these judgments that ultimately make it harder for us to live. It's so funny that that's what happens. The
Dude, and we're
second we
just
learn things,
advertised to
yeah,
nonstop to say we're not good enough as we are. We need something
yeah,
external in order to be
it's
good enough.
crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, can't be happy unless you have these pants and this drink, right?
Hmm. Exactly.
It's messed up.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So what is it? So what does one do?
I don't know. That's a hard one, right? Because like, and there's different levels too of, how effed up your childhood was, I guess, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
Because it could be better, better or worse. I think it's just like, because I think there's also an opportunity for people to like maybe like have relationships that are better with their family too, potentially, because they're more honest and more open. But it
Hmm.
is hard. You have to kind of broach these questions with yourself. Go back and look at like, you have to start looking at your habits and your kind of common ways of acting and asking yourself like, where does that come from? Especially both the negative and positive, because some of the positive ones are also going to come from that. And I think that's a good way to balance it. It's like
Hmm.
something that, like, oh, I really like that I have this trait, right? And look back and see like, oh, okay, I got that from this. Like maybe my parents always, did something. That might be a good way. And then like, oh, I hate this. Why do I always get angry in this situation? Look back and find out like, oh, maybe it's because of this X, Y, and Z. But
Hmm.
sometimes it's helpful to talk to somebody too, because they can help you have that third party outsider
Hmm.
view, look through it.
Yeah.
But then I think just start trying to form your own values, which is hard.
Hmm. You so interesting. The books that I was telling you about, Feeling Good and Feeling
Yeah.
Great. So I've been listening to his podcast a lot, Feeling Good podcast, and it's really interesting because like he trains a lot of therapists, and they're terrible at like knowing what their clients are thinking, knowing what their clients are going through, empathizing with clients, but they all think
Yeah.
they're great at it. And like I started to see this because I went through a few therapists that were just like terrible. And I was like, there must be something wrong with me because like they're a professional and they're
Yeah.
acting like this. And so I was like, it must be something wrong with me. But I'm listening to this and I was like, well, that makes a lot of sense now. Like these guys have no idea how to relate with other people. They have no idea what's going on with other people. And
Because therapists are academics though too. That's the problem, right? They're
and the crazy shit is that they don't have to actually like test anything. So this is a big part of his method is
nope.
testing. So like he tests clients before and after every session so he can understand where they are in terms of depression, anxiety, some other things. And and also like he can also test how he's doing in terms of empathy if he's relating to them and stuff like that. So he gets
Knows
feedback.
yeah, knows their situation if he's got a good sense of read of them. Like, yeah.
Yep. But like most therapists have no freaking idea. And
Yeah, well,
and
when
and they don't
has
have
a
to,
therapist
yeah.
ever done that? Yeah, think
Yeah,
about
and
it.
they don't have to test and they don't have to show that they're making any improvement. They just do stuff behind closed doors for years on end and they're like, "Well, this could take forever." And then it turns out that with like testing, he's like, "Actually, you can resolve stuff very, very quickly if you know what you're going for."
It is kind of crazy, right? That like you go to a regular doctor and like the test is easy, right? Am I getting better? Or
Yeah,
is
or they
like,
take your blood pressure, they check your
yeah,
heart,
exactly, right? It's
that type of
scientific
stuff.
based. So like, yeah, you're either getting some ailment fixed or at least managed, or
Hmm.
you're getting actual testing done before a decision's made.
Yeah.
But like, it is kind of crazy. People go to therapists for years with no bar for success. There's no mark. There's no way to measure it. There's no testing because like it's the mind. You don't know. It's like, yeah, you do though.
But
There's
it
lots of
turns
things you can ask.
it turns out you can measure it. How about that?
That would be a good method too, is like, if people do see a therapist, keep a journal and like test yourself anyway afterwards.
Hmm.
Like maybe get like pick like 5 points, like, happiness, positivity, I don't know, whatever the marks are that you decide on, and then ask yourself, like, are these getting better through seeing this person? Because even if they don't know, that's fine. As
Hmm.
long as that interaction's working, it's working, right? So like,
Well, so he says that basically the majority of clients that he sees, about 80 or 90%, it comes down to issues with anxiety, depression, habits and addictions, or relationships. Like
in
that's
that sense,
pretty
right?
much the
Yeah,
majority of what everyone deals with. And so his name is, I think, David Burns or something like that, but he has a checklist for everyone. And it's like anywhere between, I think, like 6 and 33 questions for each one to determine where you are. And it has a 3% accuracy. So like within 3%, it can
that's pretty
tell you,
good.
yeah, like it's extremely accurate. And so you can download these things for free from the internet, and you can like keep track of, and he actually encourages you as you're doing this stuff to keep track of yourself on a weekly basis or whatever to find how you're doing.
That would be a good way to do it then, is find something like that and
Hmm.
use that to measure your success. Because, yeah, I mean, again, even if the therapist isn't aware, at least then you can even bring it up with them. Be like, look, I want to
Yeah.
use this to measure my success here. So you
Yeah.
better perform well.
He did an episode on empathy, and he was talking about how like um therapists have no idea how like that they're terrible with empathy. And I
Yeah.
just wanted to give that to one of the therapists that I had. Like, yeah, you need to
But
listen
you
to
know what,
this.
though? They don't have to. And that's the
Yeah.
crazy part. And
Hmm.
that's like a lot of like, I mean, there's so many jobs when you think about it where there's no mark for how good you are.
Mm-mm.
I see it all the time with teaching too. Like teachers don't have to know how to teach. They don't have to be good at it at all. I mean, they
Yeah.
keep their job 90% of the time. It's crazy.
Oh, dude, especially when back when there was tenure.
Oh God, yeah. I know, yeah. They didn't have to do anything. They could come in
No.
drunk. And now, like, well, and now too, I think with like, and you see this, I don't know, you're seeing it more with public schools and stuff too. Like they're so short on them that they can't get rid of people anyway if they are bad because they don't have anyone else. So it's like, yeah, it's kind
Mm-hmm.
of crazy.
Yeah. So what was the topic of this
Oh,
episode?
you're F because your childhood.
Ah, right.
But I think this fits in too, though, because it's true,
Yeah.
right? These are
Hmm.
all the things. But I think there's also something that people should think about too, which is like all the experiences in life that shape us. Like, think of all the things we do when we're young that like shape who we are, like not only our family, school, education, any kind of extracurricular activities we are involved in, whether it's like learning an instrument, sports, all the people that you interact with, all the authority figures in those things are all going to have a huge impact on you and how you form as a person. And
Hmm.
when you start to think about that, it's crazy because you realize that like I don't know. I used to think about this all the time. Like, who we are, like, do we have any control over it? It's like we're like, not only are we thrown in the world and then we have to make choices, it's like all of a sudden we're like 30 and we're this person in the world that we had no choice over becoming. It's kind of crazy.
Hmm. Yeah. It does. Yeah. It is one of those things where it's like, do we have any control at all? Even if we think we have control, do we actually have control on that?
Well, that's the messed up part. I really don't think we do until we're much older. And by that point, like, it's some of the things that we might have wanted are going to be impossible if they're things that we really wanted because it's just maybe like whatever time or whatever. But like, at least it gives you a chance to start making a life that you want or forming the person that you want. But yeah,
Hmm. Yeah.
it's crazy.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Like I can never be in a teen boy band. Damn.
Nope, I know. That ship has
Missed that
sailed.
opportunity. But I can be in an old man barbershop quartet.
You could, yeah. You just won't get the same reaction.
Not at all. Yeah.
Girls screaming.
Woo! Sing it again. Uh,
Anyway,
mhm.
so you want anything?
No.
Okay. So there you have it. Everybody's F because of their childhood. We can't do anything about it, but we might be able to at least change ourselves later. Give it a shot. If you like this episode, check us out later this week for another one. Please like, share, subscribe. It helps us out a lot. You can check us out wherever you get your podcasts or on YouTube. Until next time, though, later, Randy.
Later, Danny.